When a woman suddenly goes quiet on you, do not move. What you do in the next 24 hours either saves everything or ends it permanently. Most men over 50 have been here before. Something was building, something felt real. And then, without warning, she pulled back. The messages slowed down, the warmth cooled, the availability disappeared. And the man, the one sitting where you are right now, had absolutely no idea what happened. So he did what men do. He reached out more, he tried harder, he said more. And somehow, inexplicably, the more he gave, the further she went. Nobody ever told you what was actually happening. Nobody explained the psychology beneath that silence. And so you interpreted it the wrong way, responded the wrong way, and lost something that did not have to be lost. This was never your fault. You were working with incomplete information. And today, that changes. Stay with me until the third insight in this video. That is where the single behavior shift lives. The one that reverses the distance, not by chasing, but by doing something so counterintuitive that most men will never believe it works until they try it. If this matters to you, tap like right now and let us go deep. This channel is where men over 45 come to understand what she's actually telling you and what becomes possible when you finally do. Researchers in attachment psychology have been studying emotional withdrawal for decades, and what they have found consistently challenges almost everything most men instinctively believe about what female distance means. Dr. Sue Johnson, founder of emotionally focused therapy and one of the most respected voices in relational psychology, describes what she calls the protest cycle, the pattern that emerges when someone with an anxious or activated attachment system feels emotionally unsafe. And here's the finding that matters most. Withdrawal is almost never indifference. It is almost always protection. When a woman distances herself, her nervous system has registered something that felt unsafe. Not necessarily dangerous, not necessarily your fault, but unsafe in the emotional sense. Vulnerable in a way she was not prepared for, or exposed in a way she did not consciously choose, or simply overwhelmed by the intensity of what she was beginning to feel. And the oldest, most instinctive response the nervous system has to vulnerability is to create space, to buy time, to protect the soft interior by hardening the exterior. The tragedy is that most men read this protection as rejection, and they respond to rejection the way humans respond to loss, with urgency, with pursuit, with an escalating need to close the distance. And that response, however understandable, however human, does the one thing guaranteed to make the withdrawal worse. It confirms to her nervous system that the space she created was necessary, because now there is pressure. And pressure is the opposite of safety. The cost of misreading this moment is enormous. Men spend years replaying these situations. What did I do wrong? Why did she go cold? Was any of it real? And the heartbreaking answer in many of these cases is that it was entirely real. And it was lost not because she stopped feeling something, but because the response to her withdrawal triggered a sequence that neither of them knew how to stop. This is not a trick. It is not a script. It is an understanding of human psychology deep enough to change what you do in the most important moments. So let us talk about what is actually happening when she goes quiet, why it is happening, and what the one behavior is that changes everything. The first thing you need to understand is what psychologists call the withdrawal and pursuit dynamic. And understanding it at a structural level is the foundation of everything else in this video. Dr. John Gottman, whose longitudinal research on couples at the University of Washington is among the most comprehensive ever conducted, identified withdrawal and pursuit as one of the central patterns that determines whether relationships deepen or dissolve. In the dynamic, one person, for reasons rooted in their attachment history, their current emotional state, or the specific context of the relationship, creates distance. The other person, feeling the distance, moves toward them to close it. The withdrawal deepens in response to the pursuit. The pursuit intensifies in response to the withdrawal, and the cycle feeds itself until someone either breaks the pattern or leaves. Here is what most men do not know. In this dynamic, the withdrawing person is not in control of their withdrawal the way it appears from the outside. She is not calculating. She is not playing a game. She is responding to an internal experience that often she herself does not fully understand. Her nervous system has entered a self-protective state, and that state has a logic of its own. It says, closeness right now feels like risk, and until that risk feeling subsides, closeness will continue to feel threatening. The man pursuing her, with good intentions, with genuine care, is inadvertently doing the one thing that prevents that risk feeling from subsiding. He is adding pressure to a system that needs relief from pressure to open again. Imagine this. You are holding a closed hand in yours. You want it to open. You want to see what is inside. inside, and so you grip tighter, trying to pry the fingers apart. But the tighter you grip, the more tightly the hand closes, not out of spite, out of reflex. Now imagine you simply stop. You open your own hand, you hold it steady, open, beneath hers. And slowly, without being forced, without being demanded of, her fingers begin to uncurl on their own. That is not a metaphor. That is the neuroscience of how emotional safety works. This communicates the most important thing you can possibly communicate in this moment. I am not going anywhere, and I am not demanding anything from you. And that combination, permanence without pressure, is the rarest and most disarming thing a man can offer. The second thing to understand goes even deeper. And this is the part that most men find genuinely difficult to accept because it asks something hard of them. Psychologists who work in attachment theory describe something called the secure base effect. Dr. Mary Ainsworth, whose foundational research on attachment in the mid-20th century shaped everything that came after it, demonstrated that a person moves most freely toward connection when they feel that the connection does not depend on their constant presence to survive. What this means practically is something profound. The woman who is pulling away from you is, at some level, testing a question she may not even be conscious of asking. The question is, will he still be there when I come back? Not waiting anxiously, not wounded and withdrawn himself, not punishing her with silence or flooding her with messages. Just there, steady, unchanged. Because here is the truth that sits beneath her withdrawal. She may be pulling back precisely because what she feels for you has become significant enough to frighten her. Depth creates vulnerability. And vulnerability, for someone whose past has taught her that vulnerability leads to pain, triggers the withdrawal reflex automatically. She is not running from you. She is running from the exposure that comes with caring. A woman in her late 50s described this to me once during a conversation at a community event, and her words have stayed with me. She said, "Every man I ever truly felt something for, I pushed away first. Not because I did not want them, because I was terrified of wanting them." She said the ones who chased her confirmed her fear, that she would be overwhelmed, consumed, that closeness meant losing herself. But there was one man who did not chase, who simply continued being himself, warmly, consistently, without making her feel guilty for the distance she had created. And she said, "That man became the safest person I had ever known, because he showed me I did not have to perform to keep him." That is what secure-based presence looks like from the inside of her experience. This communicates something no words could carry as clearly. I am not fragile. I do not need your constant availability to feel good about myself or about us. And when you are ready, I will be exactly who I was when you left. This is about understanding and respect, not control or manipulation. A man who uses this understanding to create the appearance of security while feeling resentment underneath will not produce the effect described here. Women sense incongruence at a level that bypasses the conscious mind. The groundedness has to be real. The steadiness has to come from an actual internal place, not a performed one. And now we reach the third insight, the one I promised you. The single behavior that shifts everything. And I want you to hear it completely before you react to it, because your first instinct may be to resist it. The one thing you do when she distances herself and goes quiet is this. You give her the space she is asking for, and you fill your own life so genuinely and completely that the space does not hollow you out. That is it. That is the behavior. But let me tell you what it actually means, because it is far more sophisticated than it sounds. Dr. David Sabara at the University of Arizona has studied emotional self-regulation and relationship outcomes extensively. His research demonstrates that men who maintain a stable, engaged, purposeful daily life during periods of relational uncertainty, men who continue to invest in friendships, personal goals, physical health, and meaningful activity, show significantly better emotional outcomes and critically, significantly better relational outcomes than men who allow relational uncertainty to collapse their daily functioning. Here is why that matters beyond your own well-being. When a man's sense of purpose and engagement is entirely dependent on the status of one relationship, she can feel that dependency. Not in a flattering way, in a pressurizing way, because her distance has now become the thing that determines whether he is okay or not okay. And that is an enormous weight to place on someone who was already feeling overwhelmed enough to withdraw. But when a man fills the space with genuine living, not performatively, not to make her jealous, not a strategy, but because he actually has a life that matters to him and people who value him and things that engage his full attention, something shifts in the energetic reality of the situation. The pressure dissolves, the urgency dissolves, and she, at some point, begins to notice the absence of that pressure. Because pressure is what she expected. Pressure is what she braced for when she pulled back, and its absence is disorienting in the best possible way. None of this works without genuine care for the person in front of you. The goal here is not to manufacture distance as a counter tactic. The goal is to be so genuinely rooted in your own life and your own sense of self that her temporary withdrawal does not destabilize you. Because a destabilized man reaches out compulsively. A grounded man continues moving forward, and that forward movement is the most honest and compelling signal he can send. Imagine this. She has gone quiet for several days. You feel the pull to message, to check in, to say something that lets her know you are thinking about her. And instead, you go do the thing you have been putting off. You call the friend you have not spoken to in weeks. You go back to the project you abandoned. You take yourself somewhere you have been meaning to go, not to distract yourself from her, but because you remember that you are a full person who existed before she went quiet and will continue to exist whatever happens next. And 3 days later, she reaches out, not because you did everything right, but because the silence from your side did not feel like punishment. It felt like permission. Permission for her to take the time she needed without it costing her the connection. That is the mechanism. Pressure closes, space opens. But only genuine space, space that comes from a man who is actually okay, produces that opening. Performed space, manufactured silence, strategic withdrawal, she feels all of it. And it produces the opposite effect. A word of caution here. There is a version of this that can go too far. Giving space does not mean disappearing entirely without a word. It does not mean going cold in return or withdrawing emotionally as a way to match her energy. Before you give space, one brief, warm, unpressured message, something like, "I am here when you are ready, no rush," creates the foundation the space needs to be received correctly. It tells her the door is open. Then you step back from the door and you go live your life. Psychologists who work in attachment-informed therapy describe this combination as the most de-escalating thing a secure individual can offer an anxiously withdrawing person. Confirmation of continued presence, followed by complete removal of pressure. It gives her nervous system the one thing it needs to begin moving back toward connection. Safety without demand. Here is what most men never understand about female psychology in these moments. A woman who has pulled back and then returned to find a man who is genuinely well, who is warm, who is unchanged, who has neither punished her for the distance nor collapsed in it, experiences something she will describe for the rest of her life as feeling safe. Not impressed, not grateful exactly, safe. And safety at the level of the nervous system is more compelling than attraction, more enduring than chemistry, more foundational than anything else two people can build together. Most men will not do this. They will reach out too soon. They will let the silence wound them. They will make her feel responsible for their pain, which only deepens her need to stay at a distance. And they will wonder, again, what went wrong. But you are here. You have stayed through this whole conversation. And something in you already understood, even before today, that the answer was not to do more. It was to be more. To be so settled in yourself, so genuinely full of your own presence, that you become the stillest point she can find when the world is moving too fast around her. That is who she comes back to. Not the man who chased her. The man who was simply, quietly, unhurriedly there. If this reached something real in you today, leave the word roots in the comments below. Just that one word. It tells me this video found the person it was meant for. Subscribe if you have not already. Tap the bell, because what is coming next may be the most important thing yet. The moment she starts coming back, what she is watching for in those first few interactions, and the single mistake most men make right then that undoes everything they just built. You will not want to miss it.